So basically, I rented this space in town, and my idea was to present art where people can come in and they could just experience the work, or they can engage in it, and they could just, the artist could have a place to, to be heard and be seen, and not so much where it's presented, as a product or something that, is a commodity, more of a, an idea or an expression, or just, more of a cultural way of presenting art.
I have this idea for the show to kind of explain an artist's process more, a more in-depth look about process itself, because oftentimes when I think about art, I think that what we make is basically the index of the actual art. I really, a lot of times, don't feel that the product is where necessarily the magic is. We may end up spending hours and hours and hours upon something, and it just sits in the corner. And those are the things that the public really never sees. And those are the things that we learn the biggest lessons from. So in my eyes, those are the most valuable pieces. I wanted to throw a show where artists could maybe feel comfortable showing us pieces of their work that we wouldn't normally see, kind of like those diary pages that you go back and read that you wrote when you were a kid and you cringe because they're so awful, but they're so honest. And luckily, we have a lot of really talented people here, so I think the work's really strong.
I ended up being happy with that echo of the initial piece that I was thinking about, the piece on the riverbank, and it's temporary in nature.
There's an evidence to an event that happened. It sort of changed the progression of my work, where it's not illustrating an idea, but it needs to exist for a reason.
Shift, and I love the idea of the first shift into third, because I feel like the key pieces in my life have always been works that kind of came up surprisingly that I didn't think too much about, or they were so different from anything I ever did. And from that point on, I could then get a new vision to what I was going forward with. Or sometimes it took time to realize that what I had done was a predictor of the future.
Plaster, wax, fabric, mat board, wire, sort of on the edge of painting, but also still three-dimensional. I think there is that idea of being preoccupied or recollecting or remembering. I mean, I had this thing in my mind. I wasn't looking at it visually, right? It's packed away in its own box, all safe and sound and away from dust. And thinking about it might be as important as actually pulling it out and looking at it. I don't know. I wonder sometimes about everything needing to be gigantic. So feeling big is one thing, being big is another.
So I wanted to make those monuments kind of like a unisex color scheme, and think about food and like domesticity, and try to kind of destabilize the macho forms in this series.
The limbs as tree limbs, the unglazed porcelain as bones, and Dorothy as wishing. That's actually a piece of the New Jersey Turnpike that I acquired. So it's really direct, trying to be as direct as possible. So I'm using ceramics and I'm using mixed media. And I think collaging is really what I would call this, three-dimensional collaging. I really like the idea of just putting it out there, putting it in your face, just being obvious, nothing subtle on these pieces. Normally my sculptures are non-representational in ceramics.
I had an idea of a very clear, sort of naturalistic situation that had all of the, symbolic components to construct a narrative that I felt could point to the kinds of things I was interested in order to not just describe and point to these dramatic and sort of social situations that had a very kind of awkward and strange dimension. I wanted to express those things, make them present, not just by exaggerating facial expressions, but by how the whole thing was put together aesthetically and structurally, that it might be destabilized or a little awkward or a little, counter to sort of pictorial expectations that the work sets up at first. After this work, I really sort of let go.
Anybody have any questions?
Sorry, I'm turning to the...
No, it's all right. I'm probably gonna just I'll chop this all up. I'm gonna make you say horrible things.
Sound bites.
Sound bites.